Hey, Islanders, and welcome to episode 56 of the Camano Voice. On this episode, I get to speak to the director of Fusion. Please welcome Rich Crouch. Hi, I'm Brandon Erickson, and you're listening to the Camano Voice podcast, where I interview folks around Camano Island and beyond. If you want to stay up to date on events, businesses, and even hear a little history of this area, subscribe to this podcast and share with your friends. Thanks for listening. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice, where we release a new episode every Tuesday. On this episode, I got to speak to Rich Crouch, who is the director of Fusion, which is a fusion of two different elementary schools' music groups, so that they can have a bigger group together as well as perform at more events. Anyways, we get into all the kind of Rich Crouch, how he got started, how he got to Camano, and how, despite not wanting to live on Camano, ended up staying on Camano and living in Camano and being very involved in the community here. But for those who may recognize the last name, Lydia Crouch, his wife, wow, really bad there. Anyways, she was on episode 18, so go and listen to that as well if you haven't already. But anyways, got to have a great conversation with Rich, learn a lot about how he's kind of jumped around the school system. We even learned about clowns, which I'm terrified of clowns, so but we still learn a little bit about them too. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Rich Crouch. Hey, Islanders, and welcome to another episode of the Camano Voice. Today I'm here with the director of Fusion. Welcome to the podcast, Rich Crouch.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
You're very welcome. Nice to be here.
All right, so before we get started, tell us a little bit about Rich.
Wow. I was born at a very early age. I'm a second-generation Seattleite. My parents were both born in Seattle. I'm their third son, and when they were found out they were expecting me, which was, as I found out as an adult, a surprise, they had to move out of Seattle into Edmonds to get to a bigger home. So I was actually born in the Edmonds area, and we were living there. And when I was 3 years old, my dad went to work one day and had a heart attack and died. And so my mom was there in the suburbs with 3, 5, and 7-year-old boys. She didn't drive. She had a car. She had a house. And so she had to kind of make a life. So next 2 years were pretty rough for her. She did learn how to drive. She, in the process, crushed our bikes in the garage. But other than that, we survived. And then 2 years later, she met my stepdad. We met my stepdad, and we all got married. And so as I was starting school at 5 years old, we moved back into Seattle and had a new dad, a stepdad. And he was a good guy. He was a good guy. But so we were living in Seattle area, growing up there. And when I was in third grade, so about 8 years old, he heard about Camano Island and actually had some friends that had places up here. And we stayed at Kama Beach one time, and we would come up and visit, and he kind of got hooked on the island, and so he found some property. So he bought 5 acres, and so starting when I was about 8 years old, every weekend we'd camp on Camano Island and clear property. And so for like a year and a half, we had one of those pop-up trailers, the hard top. Yeah, Winnebago, not Winnebago, but Apache was called. Anyway, we camped in that thing year-round for a year and a half, and the winter was very, very cold. So as we came around to the second winter, my mom said, if we're going to keep doing this, why don't we find a little cabin so we can, have a warm place to sleep at least after we're out all day, doing our clearing and stuff. So they found a little house, really little house down in El Bay area, little 2-bedroom thing, and so we started staying in that, which was really nice because we had a warm place to stay. So come November, we had a family meeting, and they announced that we were going to move to the little house on Camano Island. And we're like, what? And they're like, this is your last week of school, and we're off. So I was in 5th grade, 10 years old, when we moved to Camano. Lived down in El Bay, and at that time, all the schools were in Stanwood, so we rode the bus on very long bus routes. As a matter of fact, there were only 3 buses on the whole island that took all the kids K-12 to Stanwood, which is pretty hard to imagine. And everybody there was 4 schools, and every bus went to every school because there was a K-3 school, a 4-6 school, a 7-9 school. It was crazy. So I spent a lot of time on buses growing up. So I graduated from Stanwood High School, and had two goals in mind. One was I was never going to live on Camano Island, and number two was I wasn't going to be a teacher. So that was how I left here, was moving on. So I went to Washington State University and graduated in 4 years with a degree in elementary education with a minor in music. I had done a lot of music growing up, played the piano, did a lot of performing and choirs and drama and things. And so the arts were a big part of my life. And so I did a lot of music and theater in college and stuff. And so it just seemed the right thing to do.
So let me pause you right there. So you said you went to Wazoo and you got an education degree.
I did.
What was the reason behind that then?
That's a good question. Actually, I went to WSU on a Army ROTC scholarship. So my goal was to go into the Army as an officer. But one of my brothers was already attending West Point, and after visiting him and seeing his graduation, I realized there was a big difference between his education as an Army officer and mine. And at that point, things started kind of moving in a different direction in my life. And so I was getting really involved in some ministry things and was feeling like I wanted to be a youth pastor.
Okay.
And so it seemed like education was a really good preparation for ministry and for working with people and that kind of stuff. And it was a degree. I mean, I had to get something to fall back on. I guess I've fallen. Anyway, and then the music part just kind of got added on. It was like, well, you have to have a teaching major. And it was like, So I flipped through the catalog and thought, well, I do music. So I ended up with this elementary ed music degree that I thought I'd never use. I went right from WSU to Multnomah School of the Bible down in Portland, Oregon, and did a year of graduate work in Bible there.
Okay.
With the idea I wanted to be a youth pastor. And at the end of that time, Camano Chapel was ready to hire their first youth pastor, and I'd done a couple summers of work with them. And so I came back here to the island to live and work, which was really good because at that time my stepdad had cancer and was not doing well, and I really wanted to be close to home and help my mom and stuff. And so he lived 1 year after I moved back here, which was nice. I was here for that year to be with my mom. So I was here on the island. Remember, I wasn't going to be a teacher. I wasn't going to live in Camano, but I'm living in Camano. I'm not a teacher. So I lived here. I was 4 years of ministry and had a great time. Worked with Bill Wayland, and it's a time when the church was growing really fast, and it was just a lot of good stuff happening. And I did a lot of music and drama with my youth group kids, and that's kind of like the thing that I did with them. And we traveled and performed and things. And so I started thinking, I think there's kind of a future for me here using drama and music with ministry type things. So I thought, I'm going to see what I can do about that. Well, excuse me, where am I? I made plans to go back to Seattle Pacific University, and I was able to use my graduate credit from Multnomah to get a master's degree. And they had a program I could design my own thing. And so I did a master's of Christian ministries with an emphasis in dramatic arts. So it was the idea of using drama, theater and stuff for ministry. And so I did that, went down to Seattle and lived there. And in the back of my mind, what I really wanted was to be able to work with a group called Taproot Theater Company, which is
I've heard of that.
theater in North Seattle.
Yeah.
And so they were in residence at SPU. So when I went to SPU, I thought, great, they're right there. I can rub shoulders with them, get to know them, maybe do some shows with them. And right before I went to SPU, they moved out. They left SPU and severed those ties. And I was like, great, here I am at SPU, and they're gone. Well, after my first year at SPU, I got a letter from them, and it turns out they were looking to hire someone, and very specific needs, and needed pretty much immediately for a long tour. And so I was able to get hired, and I toured with Taproot for a year and a half in their road company, doing shows in churches and schools. And it was a good experience. And the best part about the whole thing that I learned is I didn't want to live on the road, and I didn't want to travel. It's a hard life. It's a really hard life. And it was a good experience. I learned a lot. I met some great people. But I finished that experience and kind of came back to Camano. I had no place to go, and some friends offered me a free place to live, so I was back on Camano. And I was back actually on staff at Camano Chapel for a couple of years, and in a position that really wasn't a fit for me. And so I found myself kind of what am I doing here? And I was I 30, I guess, early 30s. And still single, and still just kind of trying to figure out what was going on, and so I decided to do what made sense is I formed my own company and started traveling, performing solo stuff, And like I said, I love life on the road, which didn't make sense. But anyway, I'm trying to make a living, doing school assemblies and church programs and monologues and camps and things. And
was it just you?
it was just me, yeah.
Okay.
And so I would load my car with the equipment. I would go unload my car, do my show, load my car, come home, unload my car. I was exhausted moving equipment because I had a bunch of sound stuff and synthesizers, and it was crazy. And so I was discouraged and starving, and well, not starving, but close to it. I was pretty hungry. And Stanwood High School called me and said, the drama teacher we've had here, which was my drama teacher, who was a huge influence in my life, he was retiring, and they were looking for someone to teach 2 hours a day. Would I be interested in doing that? And I was like, well, I guess 2 hours a day, that's okay. So I checked it out, and because I had a master's degree, I was able to get recertified as a teacher. And so I decided for 2 hours a day, I'm going to Stanwood High School. Started in 1988, and I taught 2 hours, and then I could go travel to my schools and churches and still do my other things. So I started to at least pay the bills. I wasn't starving. And I got to direct 2 shows, and I had a great year. I really liked it a lot. And I was like going, that's kind of good. And I kind of liked having a job, and I kind of liked having, paying the bills. So I went to the school, and I said, hey, next year, if you have more time, I'd be interested in, maybe teaching more than 2 hours. They said, nope, sorry. Don't need anything. I said, okay, great. So I started the second year, 2 hours, and about a month in, I got a call from somebody, and they said, hey, we're about to open this new school. It was when Twin City Elementary was brand new. And
Okay.
So all the 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders were at Church Creek at the time, and it was packed. It was just overflowing. There was not a single space anywhere. They put portables in the high school parking lot for 5th graders. It was just insane how overcrowded they were. And so they were redoing some stuff, and their counts went full-time. So they needed someone for a couple hours to teach the gifted program. Sure, I can do that. And then I taught a couple PE classes, a couple music classes. So just kind of filled my day out with just like stuff. So I had a very strange schedule. High school drama, 2 hours, 4th and 5th grade gifted kids, and then 5th grade PE. It was just kind of weird. So I thought, okay, if I'm going to teach school, maybe I ought to teach what I want to be teaching rather than kind of let them throw scraps at me. So I went to the middle school, and I said, you guys need drama as an elective. And they said, yeah, you're right, we do. So my 3rd year teaching, I was half-time at the high school, 2 hours, actually 3 hours then, and then I spent my afternoon at the middle school, Stanwood Middle School, and that's when they had just one. So I taught music and a drama all day long, and then traveled at night doing my other stuff still. So I was doing drama 24/7, crazy, and was burning out really fast and all that, going, wow, this is insane. So at one point, and I'm still single, I'm still wanting to be married, living on Camano, which at the time was not a great place for single guys to meet girls. And anyway, not that it ever is a great place, but probably better. No, stop, edit that out. Anyway, yeah, so at one point, I decided the thing to do was to leave Camano and go meet people elsewhere. And so I had this bright idea, and that was to go to clown college with Ringling Brothers Circus and join the circus, and that'd be a good place to meet people. So I started to make plans to join the circus because, again, performing is in my blood, and I loved all that stuff, and I'd done a lot of clowning, and clown school was an awesome thing. And so I applied, and long story short, got rejected because I had a master's degree. I was too smart. They needed people that were desperate, that would be willing to put up with basically slave labor, and we won't get into that part of the story. But it was pretty sad. I read a book that was quite serious about the conditions they worked under, and I realized that's not for me. So the good news is the day I got that rejection letter, I actually found my first house and decided, okay, I'm going to buy a house. I'm done figuring out where I'm going to live. I'm going to live on Camano Island. That's okay. I'm going to teach school. That's okay. So, even though I didn't think at 17, 18 that was what I wanted to do, it seemed to be a pretty good fit for me. So I bought a house, and I'm still teaching 24/7, drama. And then it hits me, okay, this is my 5th year. My degree's in elementary education. Okay, I taught 3rd grade. I thought if I'm going to teach school long term, maybe I ought to consider elementary rather than secondary. So I started talking to some people and decided to make the change. So I said, I'm going to see if I can get a job elementary the next year. And a fourth grade position was opening up and was offered to me. It was great. So meanwhile, at the same time, this beautiful lady moved to Camano Island named Lydia, and she's already been on your podcast, so you've heard her story. But fortunately, she had moved here, and wonderful story short, we got married after a very quick relationship and romance, and we figured out we never went to a movie till after we were married. But anyway, we basically knew each other about 9 months and got married. So the day after school was out, we got married 27 years ago, a few weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And the next fall, I went to fourth grade, and everyone thought I had lost my mind. It's like, you went high school, middle school drama to fourth grade. I'm like, well, yeah, why not? It ended up being an excellent move. Really good for family life, really good for just lots of things. And I wasn't doing this high school plays, which was a lot of evenings out, and it was just a good choice for us. And so love that. And so thought, okay, I'll just teach fourth grade or whatever grade and just kind of move on from there. And so then we had our first child, Davis, and I'm still teaching fourth grade. So I did 4 years of fourth grade there at Church Creek. And then getting ready towards the next year, they were going to open Cedar Home, is a new school they're going to open, so the third elementary. And one day I just had this funny thought of, well, they're probably looking for a music teacher. And I got a music background, and I wasn't real crazy about the way I was seeing music being taught at the time. And I was noticing that the kids in my class weren't having very much fun. And so I went to the principal that was going to have that school, a guy I really liked, Jeff Lofgren, and I said, what are you looking for in a music teacher? And he said, well, I want my kids to be safe, and I want them to have fun. And I said, well, I could do that. So I switched gears and opened up Cedar Home and became a music specialist, and had some experience in music years before as far as the teaching of it and stuff, but really no idea what I was doing. But I knew that music is a performing thing, and so I started a choir. I started figuring out a way to get kids to want to sing together and have fun, and tried to find fun ways to make kids want to do that. And I found that age, they just were sponges. They just soaked it up, and we had some fun times. And we'd get a bus, and we'd go sing at rest homes and all sorts of stuff. And for years, we sang the Lights of Christmas. We'd go out and sing one night there, and it was just a lot of fun. And so I was an elementary music specialist, having a good time. So I think I did about 3 years there at Cedar Home. And then they opened up the 2 schools on Camano, Utsalati and El Jabay. And the teacher that was supposed to teach Utsalati called me one day and said, and I was thinking, I wish I could teach at Utsalati because we live out there and our kids are going to go there, and it'd be nice to teach where my kids go. So she called me and said, hey, want to switch schools? And I was like, sure, why not? So after 3 years at Cedar Home, I reluctantly left there because I was so happy with that situation. Great people I worked with there. And I came out and opened up Utsalati. So my second school to open, which is kind of nice. Same floor plan, which is kind of, we call it Deja School, because it's the same. Actually, El Jabay, Utsalati, and Cedar Home are all the same basic floor plan. So my music rooms are all similar. Came out there, and I think I was out here 8 years doing music. And while I was out here, both my kids were going through elementary school and just having a great time. Got to teach them first grade reading and music teacher. And again, we formed a choir and traveled with them and, would do stuff and just had a really, really fun time doing all that. And then the gal that I'd switched jobs with at Cedar Home retired. And so I started getting these calls from some friends at Cedar Home saying, hey, why don't you come back to Cedar Home? Well, my kids were going to school in Stanwood at the middle school and high school. And I was thinking, that's a good idea to be back in town where my kids are. So I went back to Cedar Home to teach music again. Left Utsalati reluctantly because I had lots of friends there and some good experiences. But started commuting back to Stanwood and taking my kids with me to school. And we all remember that fondly as a great time, spending that time in the car, taught both my kids how to drive, and just really, really enjoyed the time we had doing all that. So I spent the next, about 8 years or so. Sorry, my time's off. But about 8 years doing that. And then I started getting like, okay, I need a change. I love change. But not just the school change, but the music change was starting to get a little bit on the dry side for me. It was the same, and I need to shake it up. So I asked my principal if I could go back into the classroom, and he's like, "No, you can't go back to the classroom. You need to teach music. I'm like, no, I really need a change. And so after 3 years of saying I really would like a change, the opportunity came up to teach third grade. So about 6 years ago, I went back into the classroom, and I was teaching third grade. And I will say this, the classroom has changed so much since I taught fourth grade about 20 years before. The requirements for as far as what the state testing has required and all that stuff that I don't want to get started on all that. I'm just saying it's really changed the classroom. And I was teaching stuff to third graders that I had not taught fourth graders before because the requirements were so much stricter, which in some ways is good, I guess, but there wasn't a lot of fun. Anyway, I was doing third grade thinking, okay, I've made my choice. I'm just going to teach third grade, and that's life. So I'm teaching third grade for 3 years at Cedar Home, and thinking I had a great crew. The teachers that we worked with were awesome, and we just had some good stuff happening and great kids. And the last week of school, 3 years ago, I get this call saying, "Hey, we just found out we need a music teacher at El Bay and at Salati, halftime both. Any chance you want to come back to music?" And I'm like, I don't think so, but thanks for calling. But well, can we just get together and have a meeting and talk about it? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll talk about it, but I'm not so sure. Well, then I talked to my wife, and we realized our daughter, our youngest, was graduating from high school, and so there was no need for me to still go to town for teaching, for being with the kids and stuff. And at that point, my wife's parents moved into our house, so we had two 90 plus people, about 90 living with us. And so it seemed like a good thing to come back closer to home. And so, boom, I'm back teaching music. I'm at two schools now. I'm at Utslati and El Bay, and very different schedule, being halftime at both. That was a new thing as far as sharing two schools. And one of the things that I kind of inherited was that because it was halftime, they were getting half as much experiences. They got Veterans Day every other year, and they got different things. And I thought, what, there needs to be some way that everybody can get everything, without killing myself. And so that's when the idea of fusion was born. The idea of fusing two schools together, fusing two half choirs together to make a big choir. And so I talked to the two principals. They were very supportive, very awesome, willing to try anything. And so we created Fusion. So at one school, 1 week on Wednesdays, I have rehearsals with second, third, fourth, fifth graders for a half hour. And at the other school, the next week, I have a rehearsal for a half hour. And then we put them both together and sing these concerts. And it's been a ton of fun. Been fun for the kids to, be part of something bigger than they could be because their schools had gotten smaller here on the island. That's why it was only half time. And so there wasn't really enough kids to kind of have the big splash that's fun to be part of. And so it was fun to put it all together. And so that's kind of where we started putting it together. So that's when Fusion got started. And then that's when the first year is when we got invited to come sing at the Christmas tree lighting here at the Commons.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's try it. And we came down, and that was crazy. That first year it rained, remember that?
It was pouring.
Oh, yeah. And we were all under the cover there. But it was such a fun thing, and the kids had such a good time. And so that kind of became a fun tradition for us to be part of that Christmas tree lighting, which we've done these 3 years. So did I answer your question? I'm sorry.
No, that was great. I feel like we just got a huge download of kind of your whole life story.
It is. It's kind of one big blob there.
That's awesome. So there's different points that you mentioned throughout there. So one of the things, this is going way, way back.
Sure.
But you mentioned that you guys had a family meeting about coming to Camano. Was that something that after when your stepdad came in that you guys kind of had family meetings if something big was going on?
No, we didn't talk. That was crazy to actually have a meeting. My mom was Swedish, and I'm not sure what my stepdad was, but he talked less than she did. And so there wasn't a lot of talking in our house. So having a family meeting was more like they sat us down to tell us we were moving is what the family meeting was.
Okay.
My oldest brother was in ninth grade, so I remember he was not really happy to that was a pretty strange time to be moving. But it was kind of like, we're getting out of Seattle. And So we came, and I think we're all glad in the end. I know I am.
It became your home.
Yeah, well, it's been my home a long time.
Very cool. Okay, and then is it just you and your older brother?
There's three of us.
Three
brothers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. And then so then with the this is actually kind of going back to Lydia's podcast a little bit, but how much did you work with the theater group and stuff that the performances that she was doing? Because her and the kiddos were doing
show and tell family projects. Yeah,
Yes.
that was Lydia and I did that. Yeah, we when she first moved here, her intent was to be here on the island for a year to get state residency, then go to school at the UW and get a master's in theater. And so, because I was the high school drama teacher, people would say, "Oh, you need to meet Rich." And so she kept hearing my name because she was in theater and I was in theater. And so from the moment we met, we had that in common. We loved theater. Our first date was went to see Julius Caesar at the Rep. So early on, as we got married, we were performing together and writing stuff and doing banquets and things, and wrote a couple plays for our church and directed them and stuff. And so we had that interest. And then as our kids were little, we got connected with Lights of Christmas. And for, about 8 years, we created theater for them. And so while Lydia's got babies at home and had not much time for anything else, she was writing some music and stuff, and we were writing shows and directing these productions. We weren't necessarily in them. We'd kind of direct them, and then they'd run themselves, but they'd run out there. So we did a lot of theater there. So that kind of helped us kind of get our bearings working together, figuring out how to write together, how to create together. We would talk and talk and talk about ideas. We had a deal that in January we didn't talk about Christmas at all because we knew in February we'd start talking about the next Christmas. And so we were in the Christmas business there for about 8 years. It was like, how can you do Christmas this year? We did the 50s, we did it all kinds of ways. Anyway, so we'd done a lot of that. And then there came a time when we realized that season was ending for us. And so we were doing more shows at our church, or we did a community theater thing years ago, kind of just like open up the community. And we just started seeing that every time we did it, we were starting over. It's like we'd start over. So we thought, we need to get organized here. And so we asked about 40 friends to come and join us, and people that knew us and believed in us, and said, what do you see us doing? And it was interesting because I didn't expect the answer they gave us. At the end of the evening, they said, you guys need to start a nonprofit community theater. We're like, no, that's not what we want to do. I don't want to start a nonprofit. I don't want to run a nonprofit. But that's what it was like, really clearly. It was like, yeah, that seems to be the right thing. And so we formed Show and Tell Family Projects together. We went through the process of creating a nonprofit. And I think it was 8 years that we were in business there. And it was an awesome experience. Our kids were at that age growing up. We were wanting to really be connected with our kids. We wanted to make sure that as they went to middle school, high school, that they still would talk to their parents and stuff. And so performing it, we realized was a way to do that. And both our kids are very talented. And so they kind of would invite their friends, and we'd pick up other people, and we just started doing shows. So we would write a lot of them were original musicals, and then we did a camp in the summer. And it was a fun experience. It was really hard in the sense that I was working 2 full-time jobs a lot of the time.
Wow.
When we were in production, I would teach school till 4 o'clock, and then I'd run next door to the church that gave us space and rehearse, and it was insane. It paid the bills, though. At the time, we really needed that extra money, and so it worked out well because we would contract with the nonprofit to direct shows for them, and it was a good situation. And it was fun because we had people from like 10 different churches. We had half homeschool, half public school, and we didn't have all those lines weren't drawn. The kids all mingled. It was very healthy. It was all our shows were family friendly, G-rated, and it's hard sometimes to find entertainment for your family because you're not sure what you're going to get when you get there.
Right.
And so we really wanted to guarantee to people that they could bring their kids there and feel safe. And so that was just an awesome time and a great time for our kids growing up to be part of all that and learn a lot of leadership skills and performing skills. And it's fun to see how they've both taken that on, not necessarily doing theater, but both musically, just doing some amazing stuff. So, yeah, so that was definitely something Lydia and I did together and worked hard at. It was a good task, but it was always worthwhile, but not always easy.
Yeah.
but definitely the right thing. So yeah, it was a good season. And then the doors kind of closed on that too, and we were like, okay, we just kind of let it go because it was obvious that season was over. It was like, well, let's see what's next.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, and that's something, you know, I'd done a little bit of theater, not performing, but as like stage crew, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And for stage crew, you don't have to get there till like pretty close to the end, and then you have to be
Right.
there for the weeks and stuff
Right,
like that. But
right.
like seeing, like my sister did some plays, and then I knew, you know, being stage crew, you get to know the actors and actresses and stuff. And, you know, you got to see, like, it starts months and months before
Yeah.
anything. And then
Yeah.
it's every day, like it's just day in, day out. And they're
Yeah.
working so hard. And, you know, especially what the theater I worked with, it wasn't like a paid theater. It was like there was a couple paid people, but most of them were
Yeah.
just volunteering to do it and, you know, wanting to do it, but enjoying it. But it's a full-time job.
Yeah, and we approached it really differently because of a lot of our experiences growing up and performing with other groups and stuff. We said, you know, we want to make the process healthy because oftentimes in theater, they're kind of like, you know, it doesn't really matter if it hurts right now because in the end you're gonna be glad, or it doesn't really matter that I hurt your feelings right now or that I really put you down because it's going to make you better. And we said, you know what? We don't have to be that way. We can treat people kindly. We can be respectful. We can direct people without putting them down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can help them to grow and to do more than they could on their own without being demeaning. And so that was our philosophy from the beginning, is to make it a healthy, family-friendly thing. So our rehearsals, we always they were like 2 hours long, and we stopped. When it was over, we stopped. We said, you know what? We said we're going to go till 8:30, and at 8:30, if we're not done, oh well. We had some tech rehearsals and stuff. We didn't get through the whole show. It was like, well, we're out of time because we really wanted to respect families and really wanted to honor that and honored, you know, we didn't want to say, well, the show must go on. You know, the process isn't important. It's the product. It was like, no, we felt that if the process was healthy, the product will be good. And we found that true. And we had happier casts. We had people that enjoyed performing with us because they knew we weren't going to kill them. We got into the habit of taking the last night off before a show opened. And everyone's like, you can't do that. It's your final dress. It's like, no. We couldn't use the theater one year is what happened. They scheduled something else. And so we took the night off and was like, that was the best thing we ever did. Everyone was rested and not tired of each other. And so we started taking the night before our opening off and loving it. And I suggest that to a director I was with in a show recently, and she's like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, it worked for us. Guess it won't work here. It worked there. Anyway, so we really, really worked hard at being different and being healthy, and it paid off. We have a lot of friends because of that experience, as opposed to people that are going, whoa, I won't do that again.
Right.
You know? But we also had people that would leave our shows to go do theater elsewhere saying, oh my goodness, it's different. And we finally got to say, you know, just so you know, it's not always like this. You know, it can get pretty savage out there. So you have to be careful.
Yeah.
You have to be careful where you go.
Well, it is one of those like very, like, I don't know, cutthroat businesses, but like it has to be like when you get into the competitive side, it's the best of the best. And if you're just a little bit below, I mean, they cut you off at the knees, and it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, it could be real brutal.
So, and then if there's ever drama between cast members, I remember like we didn't usually have major stuff, but if there's any like minor, like these two people don't really like each other, but they're supposed to be opposite of each other, right?
Right.
And you're just like, I don't know how this is gonna work.
Yeah. Well, and we had some pretty large casts because we felt if there was, if someone had some potential and some interest, and there wasn't a reason why we couldn't use them. I mean, once in a while they weren't ready maturity-wise, we would find a place for them, and so we would have these choruses, and then we'd have kind of like a chorus, but we'd have a place where everybody could be involved. So like, I think our biggest show had a cast of 100.
That's crazy.
It was insane, but it was fun because we let people find their place. That, you know, whatever time they had and experience they had, we were able to kind of turn that into something, hopefully an experience for them that was, you know, helpful to them. So it was crazy. We had a theater friend help us with auditions one night, and we got through with all the auditions. They were talking about different people, and we were saying, well, we need to cast this person because of this, and we need to cast that person because of that. And she finally said, you know, you're not doing theater here. You're doing social work. And we thought, you know what, we are. We are using theater as a tool of educating and of encouraging people. And I had to stop and say, well, wait a minute. That's what my master's degree is in. Oh, yeah. That was what that was 30 years ago. I was like, oh, so I realized show and tell really was the thing I'd prepared for all those years ago. which was really cool. It was kind of like, okay, this is sweet that all those funny paths that people always thought I was on such a weird path and so like lost and out of control and like, do you know where you're going? But as I look back, that path is just take me right to where I am and who I am, and it's good. I like it. I like living on Camano. I like teaching. So there you go.
It's like green eggs and ham, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I do find, when we, my wife and I did a lot of dancing when we were dating, and we continue after married, but then with kids, it gets a lot more difficult to get the night out. But it was something that, both of us started dancing when we were in probably 14, 15 years old. And it does, the arts have a funny way of, the maths and the sciences teach you the facts and how to think through these things. But I feel like the arts a lot of times can help you learn to learn. Because you start seeing things in new ways, and it combines both aspects of the data and the facts, and then you get to blend yourself into it as well.
Yeah, it connects to the heart. You can spend a lot of time connecting the mind, but if you connect to the heart, music, drama, they just really get right to it. So yeah, and it's a great way to build community when you perform together. It's what a great way to trust people to be on stage and looking at someone saying, I sure hope you're going to say the line that you're supposed to say right now, because if you don't, I don't know what to do. But you just trust them and you get through it together, and you're like, this is a great way to learn how to work together and stuff. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, and then one of the things I wanted to touch back on, you don't have to go super deep if you don't want to, but I am a little curious. You mentioned that you looked at clown college. First of all, what kind of made you kind of look at that and think about that?
Yeah.
And then what's kind of the background there?
Yeah. Like I say, I always performed, and in college I actually did mime, and which is kind of a joke in the family here, but yes, I'm a trained mime, white face and all. And I actually, once it clicked with me, I had some good experience with that, and have done several things through the years and taught stuff a lot. And I juggled, and I did clowning. I created a couple clown characters and stuff. And I just loved, although I did have a traumatic experience as a child with the clown, and I was fearful of them until I was about 10 years old.
See, I'm still afraid of them, so I haven't got past that yet.
But it's helped me be a better clown because I'm sensitive. I don't get in kids' faces like the one did in mine, so that helped me. But I just kind of done all those skills and stuff, and then I started hearing about this clown college, and tremendous training. It was just insane training and juggling and unicycling and creating a character and on and on. And it's totally free. It was down in Florida. It was like an 8-week program, and it was totally free. But at the end, your final performance was an audition for the circus. And if they offered you a part, you had to tour for 2 years with the circus to pay back this free thing. Well, there was a guy named Bill Irwin. He's a performer back years ago. That was amazing. He did a lot of physical comedy, a lot of pantomime stuff. And it turns out that he was kind of my idol at the time, and it turns out he had gone to clown college. And I started thinking, well, if he went to clown college, maybe I should go to clown college. Well, I was looking for something to do one summer when I was kind of in the midst of all that drama stuff. And I thought about doing like a summer theater, someplace, go to summer stock. And I thought, oh, I know, I'll just go to clown college for the summer and then come back and teach school. So I wrote to them to get the information, found out it was only in the fall. So it was like, oh, shoot, if I'm going to do it, I have to take a year off school and hope I don't get picked for the circus and stuff. I thought, my options here weren't that great. I thought, I'll at least try. Mm-hmm. Well, I get this application. You said I don't get into too much detail. So anyway.
No, you're good.
Get this application, and the first thing they wanted, it was like 8 pages of typing. It was insane, all the questions they asked. Mostly about drugs and alcohol and how you feel about performing with people who are high and drunk, which was kind of disconcerting. But anyway, but one of the things they wanted was 3 pictures, full-length pictures of me in swimwear. And I was like, swimwear? Me? At the time, I was overweight. I'll just flat put it. I was a lot heavier than I ever wanted. It's certainly not enough to show anybody a picture of me in swimwear. So I talked to a friend of mine who agreed that my nutrition was horrible. Again, I was still a bachelor, right? And so she gave me some advice on how to eat better and stuff. And I started walking, and every day I would walk for like an hour. And I had this route I did, and it was really good because I lost weight and I got much healthier. But I also mentally got healthier. And as I walked, I started kind of reevaluating my decision and what I was doing and why I was doing it. And then I read that book I was alluded to about life on the road with the circus. And I made my own decision. I said, even if they offered it to me, I probably wouldn't do it because it's not a healthy choice. It's not. And so the day I got that rejection letter, I wasn't disappointed. I was relieved because I pretty much had decided it wasn't a good thing. But the training was still in the back of my mind, like, oh, it was such good training, such good experience. But if I'd have gone, I wouldn't be here to meet Lydia. So it's a good thing I didn't do it. So
Yeah.
they've since closed. They don't have it anymore, which is a shame because it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. There's a lot of, in fact, a couple podcasts ago now, was with Hope Unlimited, and they work with abolishing modern day slavery and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But also not just with the slave trade. There's like the sex trafficking stuff like that, but also like the slavery of paying below minimum wage and things like that, of getting these people in indentured servitude, basically.
Yeah.
And
well, at that time, Ringling Brothers was the circus in the world. That was the one that everybody worldwide wanted to be in. And so all these foreign acts would come and audition, and they would be paranoid because if they lost their job with that circus, where were they going to go?
Yeah.
Because they'd reached the top, whatever. And so there's the book's called Ringmaster, if you ever want a good read. But Ringmaster, this guy traveled for a season as a ringmaster. But it was eye-opening, what people would go through to try to keep that job that basically was, they paid very little, and then you paid back to live. Anyway, it was crazy. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
And all they required was a high school education, and I had a master's degree, so I was overeducated for sure. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. And then as far as like when you were going in and out, like
yeah, I've taught a lot of places.
But what did that kind of feel like every time you started at a new school? Did you feel like you were starting over again, or do you feel like it was a new starting something new?
Starting over in a good way, in that I could kind of set new boundaries and new rules. Because in the beginning, I just get myself so strewn out with promises to kids and different things. And it was like going, oh my goodness, how am I going to keep that going? My first school, every concert, we got a new T-shirt. So twice a year they were buying T-shirts, and I was going through the whole thing of ordering T-shirts, and it was just crazy. So then I got to the point of, well, wait a minute, if I use the same T-shirt year after year, they can reuse the shirts, which helps families. It's a little easier, whatever, and that's like, duh, So those things, I would learn from my mistakes or learn from things and kind of improve on it. So, and I love teaching because every year is a new start. Every fall, I get to start at square one and say, okay, what am I going to do differently than last year? What worked last year? What didn't work? How can I improve it? How can I better reach my kids? And changing school, same thing. Just gave me a chance to kind of retool it and think, okay, what can I do differently? I'm much older than I used to be, so I have to think about my energy and that kind of stuff, So it's been good as I moved around to be able to kind of keep things working for who I am, because I've changed a lot too in the last 30 years. So
yeah. And then when you returned back to Cedar Home Elementary, did you get your same office,
Yeah, I went back to music, and the kids were different, but most of the staff was still there, and it was like going home. It was really fun. Yeah, it was a good time. A lot of good people there. And, all the schools I teach at, there's good people everywhere. And it's fun because when we have like an all-district meeting, I see people that I've taught with through the years from all the different buildings. And it's fun to just have all those memories with people. And there's a lot of really good teachers around here.
Yeah.
Really good.
Well, and I do think, I've interviewed George Colby, who's the leader of the FBLA group at Stanwood High. And talking with a lot of the other teachers and stuff in this area, just every time I start talking with teachers and stuff, to me it's very much, at least it seems like a vocational calling, the people that are in teaching and teaching in elementary schools or high schools or wherever, because it's not necessarily like a high-paying job.
Right.
And you end up working a lot of hours during your time. And now you get summers off, but a lot of people end up working summer jobs, so they don't really end up the summer off. And then you have to deal with kids on a regular basis, and sometimes you get great classes, and sometimes you get rough classes. But regardless of what class they get, it seems their hearts always go out to those kids, and they always care about them. And I always have such a high respect for those teachers that do that day in, day out. And they have to work in a system that doesn't always benefit them in helping and reaching out to those kids.
Yeah, if you're in teaching for the money, you made a big mistake. Not that you can't make a living, but you definitely have to have that calling. You definitely have to have a reason to be there that's beyond just it's a job, because it's a hard job. I mean, you are making thousands of decisions every day. I mean, and like in my job, every half hour I have 30 new kids in my room. So in the midst of a week, I'll see 700 different kids. And they all have names. And it's important to know kids' names. And I try really hard to learn them and use them, but it's something I have to work at because it's important that you, when you look them in the eye and call them by name, it's like, oh, you know me, as opposed to, hey kid, you know, a little whatever, it's important, and so every year I have to say, okay, I this year this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm supposed to be, and it's been a good ride. I've had some good experiences, and I've had some hard ones. I've had some hard classes. I had some years easier than others, but that's the nature of it. Every year is different. Kids are different,
Yeah. Well, and I found I haven't done anything like actual teaching, but I've done helped out in things like Awana, and I've taken different leadership roles within whether it's churches or groups and stuff. And it's interesting because that kid that day one they start pushing your buttons, and you're just like, how am I going to deal with this? And by the end of it, a lot of times that's the kid you have the connection with at the very end, and so it's just, all kids are different, and they all come from different backgrounds, and so.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Very cool. So, all right. Well, I like to end every podcast with some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, do you have a lesser known or favorite location on Camano Island that you like to hang out?
Oh, we live in the Brentwood area, not in Brentwood, but next to it. But at the top of Brentwood, which is, I guess, a private road, there's a loop that we walk. And we take my mother-in-law, who's 94, every day when it's sunny, we take her for a walk. But on the west side, we see the Cascades and Mount Baker. And then we literally turn, and we're looking at the Olympics. And Skagit Bay, and over towards Oak Harbor. The view is just phenomenal from up there. So that's one of my favorite places to walk and kind of be, not necessarily a public place as far as like a beach or something like that. Iverson Beach, though, is my favorite beach on Camano. I'm so glad we have Iverson Beach, because that's been a great, great place to take our kids and stuff. And my new one is Barnum Point.
Yeah.
I want to spend more time there, but that is really cool what they're doing up there, and some beautiful trails and things. So, yeah. Yeah,
they've done a great job there. Up there. Pretend you have a friend coming from out of town. What would their first day look like here?
That's funny, because usually we take people to Seattle or to La Conner or something like that.
Well, that works.
The second day, we'd take them to Iverson Beach for sure if we could,
Yeah.
Possibly the state park. Yeah, those probably two places.
All right. Who is an interesting or fascinating person in this community that I should interview next?
Have you interviewed Bill Wayland?
No, I haven't.
Oh, golly. He's a great mentor in my life. He's amazing. I tell you, an interesting and fascinating person. My mother-in-law at 94 is fascinating, but she's not necessarily from here. She's lived here for 24 years, but she's Southern.
Okay.
And she is a stitch. But, anyway, if you want a southern view of Camano Island, you can invite her.
Yeah, that would be great. All right. And lastly, if you could have a message on a billboard on Camano Island, right as you're driving on the island, what would it say?
Well, I probably welcome. Hope you find some treasure here, because there's lots of cool stuff, but you gotta be willing to look around for it. It's not so easy to find sometimes. But yeah, I'd definitely say welcome. Through the years, we've all come here from someplace else, and that's important that everybody have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that's neat about Camano, and the people that come and visit here first day that have never been here before, they drive onto the island, and a lot of times their first question is like, all right, we're on an island. Where do we go to the beach? Because most of our beaches are not as cut and dry as just drive up and it's like the beach. Because you drive up to one place and it's like private. Okay, can't go there. Go somewhere else. It's private. So
Well, even Iverson Beach, trying to tell people how to get to Iverson.
Yeah.
And they're like, you do what? And then you walk over this berm, and then you'll see the beach. And then you walk over the logs. And I mean, it's a journey to get there. But when you get there, it's a great beach. But it's not like the state park. You just drive up and park on the beach. And, So, yeah, it is unique in that way.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. And Islanders, I will talk to you on the next one. Well, a big thank you to Rich Crouch for joining me on the podcast today, and thank you for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us be found by other Islanders like yourself. And for more information on this episode, you can go to CamanoCommons.com/EP56. That's CamanoCommons.com/EP56. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.